welcome to Syntax. On this Monday Hasty Treat, we're going to be talking all about scroll-driven animations. We're going to be giving you a little bit of an introduction as to what they are, what you can do with them, and just how incredible of an awesome new technology this is for the browser. My name is Scott Tolinsky, and with me as always is Wes Boss. What's up, Wes?
Hey, stoked to talk about this. It's such a cool API that's hit CSS and JavaScript. And it's unreal, all the fun stuff you can do with it.
I'm so stoked. This one, view transition, starting style. There's so many cool new APIs, but this one in particular feels like it has a lot of depth into what you can accomplish with it. So I'm stoked to see some of the things that you're going to be talking about today. I'm also stoked to see my Sentry dashboard because it does not show any major errors at this time, because guess why? We use Sentry to fix those errors on the Syntax website. So if you're having bugs and issues and stuff on your website, you need visibility into that, and you can get that with Sentry. So you just sign up for Sentry, you drop a script in your site, next thing you know, you're cruising, you're getting all your errors popping in, you're getting those stack traces, it's looking at your source maps, it's telling you exactly where the problem is and who's hitting that problem. Maybe there's an obscure bug with one specific browser. You're going to know what browser it is and where that bug is. You can go fix that thing. That way people don't have an issue. So if you want to check this out, head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Sign up and get 2 months for free. All right, let's get into it. Scroll-driven animations.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. So we had Bramis on the podcast a couple of months ago, and he kind of talked a lot about that. But I thought we'd do like an example of the actual API now that it's starting to hit the browsers. I've used it in a couple websites already myself, and I hit a couple bugs last week. Not bugs, but like I hit a couple like, how do I do that? And like it caused me to really dive into the documentation as to how it all works and all the nitty gritty. And I was like, man, this is pretty flexible. So
wow. So you used it on real things or just demos that you're experimenting with?
No. So my TypeScript site that's coming up has I can even show it to you. Here, let's start sharing the screen.
Cool. I'll be stoked to see what you do for progressive enhancement here. This is one of the ones that I've been kind of staying away from. Oh man, you're too much, Wes. This is gorgeous looking.
All awesome. Right. So the idea here is that, and you can see how the cards are scaling up and scaling down as you scroll.
Yes.
We should say that this has the potential to make a lot of very obnoxious websites. As with everything, once we get new tech, people are going to abuse it. However, I think that animation can be very thoughtfully done. Animation can be done to add context. It can add cues to what's going on the website. I think that this can be used for a lot of good to make a better website experience, especially like when you look at a lot of the native stuff that Apple has. And then we start seeing like, oh, now we can do scroll-driven animations on the web, and we have the view transitions being added and all this type of stuff. It's like, we want those. That's why people say web apps don't feel like native apps. A part of it is because of this type of stuff. So these scroll-driven animations are based on the CSS Animations API, both the CSS Animations API and the actual JavaScript Animations API, and they work with both of them in this case. And the way that it works is that, well, there's sort of two ways that it works, and I'll get into that in just a second. But as you scroll, you're able to apply an animation to different elements depending on how far you've scrolled that element. So let's get into that. A lot of these examples are going to be coming from scroll-driven-animations.style. This is Bramis's website. He also has a really good video course that's like, I think it's like an hour and a half or whatever, that you could just blitz through to sort of get the idea of how everything is working. So keyframes in CSS allows you to spell out an animation. So you say at 0% do this, at 50% do this, and at 100% do this. Or you can say to, from, and you can make all of these different keyframed animations with CSS. And normally when you apply or when you turn on that animation, you give it a set of time, right? You say, put this animation over 5 seconds and then it go infinite or repeat 3 times and then finish. The difference with this is that we still use CSS keyframes, but instead of it playing itself over time, scroll-driven animations play themselves over a timeline that is controlled by your scroll. So you're sort of scrubbing through the animation, not with time, but with your actual scroll wheel. Now, there are two new CSS properties that we need to know about. You take all of your existing CSS animation knowledge with you. So all of your keyframes, all of your easings, all of your fill modes, all of your direction, all that stuff stays except for the actual amount of time that the animation will play out. And we add two new animation properties, which is animation timeline and animation range. So let's first talk about timeline. Timeline defines if the animation is going to be controlled by how far you are scrolling an element or how far an element is on page, right? So there is scroll, which is I have a div and it can scroll from top to bottom, and I'm going to use that to go from 0 to 100% of the actual element. So here's an example right here. I'm scrolling and it goes from 0 to 100%, right? The other one, which I think is even more useful, is how far you have scrolled on the actual page. So sorry, I gotta make this a bit bigger so I can get the scroll bar. So you see this element right here, and it doesn't hit until it breaks onto the page. Very similar to like an intersection observer, if you've used that into JavaScript API before. And then you see as it scrolls through the page, you go from 0 to 100%, and that then is scrubbing the animation as it goes on the page. And that is really cool because you can say, as this thing is more on the page, then move the animation along throughout the timeline. So scroll-based timelines are based on how far an element is scrolled. This could be the body, this could be another element. And then you can also name a scroll timeline, which allows you to reference how far you are scrolled somewhere else in your CSS. So you could have a div, like for example, more commonly, the entire body of a page will be scrolled. Let's find an example that he has here. Reading progress indicator, right? So as you scroll through the page, you can show the progress indicator at the top here. This is just a little red bar that goes from 0% wide to 100% wide.
And we should say on top of all of this, because I don't know what it looks like on your end, Wes, but for me, when I'm looking at your screen recording here, it is a little choppy. It is very smooth. And if you're seeing this and it has a lower frame rate by the time you're listening to this, I just want to say it is very smooth.
Yeah, and that's a great point, is that the CSS scroll-driven animations are not done on the main thread. So previously, if you want to control something with a scroll, it had to be done on the main thread because you're literally listening for JavaScript scroll events and then passing that data to your CSS. Now that data of how far you are scrolled or how far into the view an element is now available in CSS, so it can be done off the main thread, which means even more buttery smooth animations. So the named one, real quick, is if you want to be able to access how far somebody is on a scroll somewhere else, you can give that a scroll a custom name. It's almost like a variable, has a dash in front of it, and you can then access it somewhere else in your CSS, kind of like a CSS variable, which is pretty nifty. There's view-based timelines, which is what I've been doing. Here's another example I have right here. These little cards right here, I wanted to scale them up from 0 to 100% over the first 50% of the viewport. So you can see how they're going from 0 to 50% as I scroll up. So this is referred to as a view-based timeline, not because I don't care how far I am scrolled in this body here. I care how far each of the elements are on the page. And in this case, I'm waiting for them to hit right about there to be 100%. There's a really cool set of dev tools that Bramus has also made, which allow you to visualize where they are. So if I go to my dev tools here, see my scroll-driven animations. Let me make this a bit bigger.
And this exists within Chrome today, or is this something you had to install?
No, so this is a Chrome extension that you must install that's added to DevTools. But you can see, here's my card. And then as I scroll, it's showing me the view timeline is 11% in. And then...
So are those using viewport units or essentially the viewport percentage?
Yes. Let me show you the code beside it. So the code here is animation timeline is a view. So how far onto the page this element is. And then start when it breaks right onto the page, which is cover. I'll explain that in a sec. And then end. This is, I had to ask on Twitter basically how to do this is when should the animation end? And in our case, I want to end based on its entry point plus 50 viewport units. So you're saying 50% of the viewport, once it's hit that, then end the animation range. By default, it's going to be 0%. So if I type normal and normal here, as soon as it breaks onto the screen, it's going to be 0%. And then as soon as I'm fully scrolled, right there, that's 100%, right? Wow, and cool. I'm also using this with position sticky, which is why it looks a little bit funny. And that's why I had to use that animation range end. So let's look at the actual value here. So let's look at the view ranges visualizer because we talked about animation timeline, which is it based on scroll or view? And the other property we have is animation range. So basically, where does the view timeline start and finish? So if we take a look at this example right here, by default, it's going to be cover 0 to 100%, meaning that the animation is going to start as soon as the element cracks onto the screen. As soon as it peaks its first little pixel above the fold, it starts at 100%. First little pixel. And then it shows all of its pixels. And then as soon as it poops its last little pixel off the screen, it gets to 100%, right? So that's the default if you want to animate something all the way up. But in many cases, you don't want your element to be fully animated once it's off the screen, because a lot of times you're simply just scaling up or sliding in from the side or doing something like that. So you can change those values from cover to contain. So contain is different than cover in that it must be 100% peaking its pixels on the screen before it will even start itself.
It feels like they thought of everything with this API.
So, that's the problem I had. I was like, how do I base this? My problem was like, okay, I want it to start cover. Like as soon as it starts peeking on the screen, I want it to start. But then I want it to finish kind of halfway through, right? So what I had to do is I had to change the animation timeline. So I changed it based on its entry. And then in this case, you can only do percentage, but you can use anything. You can calc, you can use a variable. If it's in JavaScript, you can put a JavaScript value in there. In my case, I did 50 viewport height units, but I think I can do something like 50%. Oh, that'll show me once the element is 50% on, then it will start to animate itself. So that could also be helpful as well. And there's entry crossing. So as soon as it cracks that on, and then exit and exit crossing for the additional values there.
Wow.
Other cool examples is I did a little TikTok on this one right here, which, this is just using CSS, if you can believe it or not. But this is an SVG path that is sort of scribbled on the screen. And then we are changing the stroke offset on that SVG you can go from 0 to 1. And
it's the classic SVG draw on technique.
Yes.
If you've ever seen SVGs that draw themselves on, you're just attaching that offset to a scroll position.
Exactly. And previously you had to do that in JavaScript, but now you can simply do it in CSS. And the animation draw, where's the keyframe here? Here we go. The keyframe is simply just stroke dash offset 0. So basically go from your default, which is 1, to 0. And it will then draw itself as I scroll the thing into view, which is wild. So much really cool stuff you can do with it. I certainly really clicked for me when I checked out this tool that Bramus made, because you can change the values and sort of visualize it. And then when I was debugging everything, I had to go into the dev tools for scroll-driven animation to really see, okay, where does the browser think this is at right now? So really good tooling around this, really good demos on here, some really good videos from Bramus. And I think it's going to be very helpful. It is only in, what's the values right now? So it's only in Chrome and Edge right now.
Behind a flag.
There is no, it's not even behind a flag.
Huh. According to Can I Use, it's behind a flag.
Really?
Maybe that's animation, maybe not animation range. Okay, yeah, no, this shows it. What was I looking at? I was looking at scroll timeline. Sorry, that's what I was looking at.
Oh, okay. That is
so the at rule. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So pretty exciting. There's a polyfill both for the JavaScript and for the CSS. So you can use it today. You can go ahead and start to use it. The other thing is it is progressive enhancement, meaning that if it doesn't work, your elements are simply just on the page, just make sure they are on the page. Here, let's take a look at this example right here. Let me open up Firefox.
Oh, what's interesting, Wes, is that Can I Use shows scroll timeline as being behind a flag, but MDN and baseline show it as being available in Chrome. So I think this might be a situation where Can I Use is behind.
Starting to see that now that there's like 2 of them. You're starting to see the information being a little bit out of date or out of sync. But so this is the example in Firefox where it is not supported. And the escalator is simply stairs, right? Look at that. It still works just fine. The elements just do not scale up on their way in. So again, it's something you can start to use.
Sorry, Wes, to cut you off. If you want to further progressively enhance this, let's say you weren't happy with the way this looks, you could always use a supports query to know if the browser supports this feature. And if it doesn't support this feature, you can adjust your layout accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe you don't want them off page, or if you do have to put like an initial animation value in it. Oh, one more thing.
Or maybe you just want them grouped together in a different layout entirely, right? Yes.
Very doable. One more thing, which this blew my mind, is Dave Rupert has a blog post about how he used scroll-driven animations to give a table a shadow with position sticky. And I thought that this is wild because in CSS, we've always wanted a stuck selector. When this thing is in its stuck position, like a position sticky, but once it's stuck to the top or to the bottom or wherever you're sticking it, in this case, he is sticking the first column of the table so that when he scrolls, the names of the columns will stay there and the rest will go underneath it. That's a great use case for position sticky. However, if you want to style them differently based on when they are stuck and unstuck, you have to use like a resize observer to check if it's stuck or not. And you can use a little bit of a hack here where you can basically just set the last state of the keyframe to be the stuck state. And I even tried it. I went a little bit further. So if you still want an animation, you can animate up to 99% and then put your stuck state in the 100%, which is pretty nifty. I think I still would like a stuck state in CSS without JavaScript, but that's pretty close without any JavaScript.
That's something we've all had to do quite a bit. I mean, I feel like I've run into that situation a ton. You're building any sort of scrolling area that's contained. You kind of want those shadows in there to indicate there's more data here than you might be seeing.
Yeah, or like a fixed header as well. You want to throw a little shadow, or you want to style it differently. Super easy. Actually, let's try the scroll driven on Firefox. Look at this. This is Firefox. It's not supported. The website
works fine.
Is working just fine because of the The polyfill has been loaded. So let me show you the stuck header. Where's the fixed header? Oh, this one's cool. The fly in contact list. Oh, no, he doesn't have it. He doesn't have the polyfill loaded on all the examples. Shoot. Oh, this one, he has a polyfill loaded right here.
Huh.
Cover flow.
That's in Firefox with a polyfill?
Yeah.
So what's the downside to using the polyfill?
Probably that it has to run it. It's probably using resize or not intersection observer, and it's running on the main thread. So certainly you can have it.
You know, if you're only serving that polyfill to the people who need it, then
yeah,
huh? Or you just fall back to no animations. Man, the options are way better for this than I was expecting. When we had this episode on the calendar, I was thinking I was taking the role of the classic CSS commenter. Great, but I can't use it. And now I'm stoked to learn I can. When you told me that you were using this in a real site, I could not believe it. Now I got to get moving on this right now. We're canceling the rest of the episodes. I got to spend some time on scroll-driven animations.
Pretty exciting stuff. That's all we have for today. Hopefully it gives you a good idea of scroll-driven animations. We got the view, we got the scroll, you've got your keyframes that are scrubbing them, and then a whole bunch of options to tweak them here and there.
Sick. Wow, that's amazing. I'm really stoked for this.
All right, we'll catch you later.
Peace.